See, everybody talks about the value of you going out and buying a home in your 20s. But when you go out and buy a home to live in, the way that you make money is if you can sell this home for a profit. What some people like to say is if this home goes up in value, you can pull cash out. But that's kind of a risky game, because if you're pulling cash out to go out and buy cars, you're using the money from your home to buy things that are losing value, like a car or a vacation. So let's not talk about that. People are hoping that you can buy this home for $400,000 and you'll be able to sell it for $500,000 10 years from now. But when you sell it, you're no longer going to have a home to live in. Not to mention the fact that when you live in this home, you also have to pay for the property taxes out of your pocket. You have to pay for the insurance out of your pocket. You got to pay for the maintenance out of your pocket. You got to pay for the upgrades out of your pocket. And you have to pay for all the other expenses associated with the home ownership out of your pocket. Versus what worked well for me was buying rental properties in my 20s instead of worrying about buying a home. Now, if you don't have the money to go out and buy a rental property, just stick with me and I'll show you another option that you have. But now, instead of you going out and buying a home to live in where you got to pay for all the expenses out of your pocket, when you go out and buy a rental property, now what you're doing is you're buying a property not to live in yourself, but to rent it out to somebody else. And if you do it correctly, now this property is going to be generating cash flow through the rent. Now, this rent is going to be used to cover the property taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, the management fees, the upgrades, and hopefully the mortgage as well, because if it's not paying for the mortgage and everything else, it is not a good cash flowing deal, and you want to find a good deal that's covering all these expenses and then putting some money in your pocket as well. So now when you have this rental property that's paying you money every single month, and then that rental property grows in value, well, now you can sell that rental property and buy a bigger rental property. And there are a lot of tax shields that allow you to do this without paying any money in taxes. It's called a 1031 exchange. I'm not going to go over that in this video, but what it allows you to do is if you bought this property for $400,000 and you sell it for $500,000, you can sell this, take that $500,000, go out and buy a bigger rental property that's paying you more cash flow and not have to worry about any of the property appreciation taxes. Now, of course, you get the same benefit if you went out and bought your own home and you sold your home for a profit. There are a lot of tax deductions there when you sell the home for a profit as well. However, when you have the repairs and upgrades here on the rental property, it's being paid for through the tenant's rental income that you're generating instead of paying for it out of your pocket. And then you can use this rental property income to help subsidize the home that you want to buy yourself. Now, if you're saying, but Jaspreet, I don't know if I have all the money to go out and buy a rental home and then buy a home for myself. Well, another thing that you could also consider is potentially house hacking, because what house hacking allows you to do is it allows you to do one of two things. House hacking, number one, is you can go out and buy a home like this to live in yourself. And when you buy a home to live in yourself, you get to qualify for lower mortgage rates, because when you buy a home to live in yourself, you get a primary residence mortgage, and your primary residence mortgage is a lower interest rate than an investment property mortgage. So now you go out and you get a primary residence mortgage to live in this home yourself. But one of the things that nearly every mortgage allows you to do is they allow you to move out after a year and 1 day, and then you can turn this property into your rental. So now, what does this mean? Well, now you can buy this property to live in. You live there for a year and a day because you have to have the intention to live there. Well, now your intention just has to be for a year and a day. And again, get an attorney to review your mortgage, but most mortgages will allow for this. You live in this property for a year and a day. Then after a year and a day, you move out, you buy another property, or you rent somewhere, or you move out, move somewhere else, and then you turn this property into a rental. And now, because you lived there, you're able to qualify for a lower mortgage. And now you turn this property into a rental, and now you do it again and again and again. And you can do this as many times as you want, as long as you live in the property for a year and a day. And of course, talk to an attorney just to make sure that there are no specific clauses in your mortgage. But the second way that you can do house hacking is, what is a primary residence? Because a primary residence can be a single family home, it could be a condo, it could be a townhome, but it could also be a duplex, a triplex, or a quadplex. These things also qualify to be your primary residence. So now, if you want to go out and buy a home, you can go out and buy a property where you live in one unit and you have 3 other units attached, because you buy a 4-unit property, and now you rent out unit 1, unit 2, and unit 3. You live in unit 4, and now your neighbors are paying you rent every single month, and this rent can be used to cover some, if not all, of your mortgage. And then after a year and a day, well, guess what? You can also move out if you want and rent this unit out yourself. But because you're buying it to live in yourself, you still get to qualify for those lower mortgage rates, because this is your primary residence. So when it comes to now going out to buy that home, instead of just thinking about buying the home that you want to live in for the rest of your life, you can also think about generating income for the rest of your life by either buying a rental property, or by house hacking a rental property, or by house hacking a multi-unit property. This way now you can start generating income for the rest of your life, instead of just buying a property to live in, which, when you have more money, you can buy a bigger property and not have to worry about the cost either. The third purchase that you want to consider making in your 20s is a cheap but reliable car, a good working condition car, something like a Toyota Corolla, a Toyota Camry, a Honda Accord, something that's used in good working condition that you don't have to worry about the payments for, that you can buy outright, and you don't have to spend a lot of money maintaining. And the reason why is because what ends up happening to so many people in their 20s is you finally start making that decent income. And as soon as you start making that decent income, what do you want to do? You want to get the BMW, you want to get the Mercedes, you want to get the Jaguar, you want to get something nice that looks like you're making a good income now. So now what ends up happening is you drive a car that looks like this, that every time you drive by, everybody says, "Ooh, nice car." But the price for that "ooh, nice car" is you're going to be paying somewhere between $500 to $1,000 a month for this car, depending on how much money you're making. But let's just assume it's the low end. $500 a month for this car. Not to mention now you also got to pay the premium gas. Not to mention now you also have the more expensive insurance. Not to mention now you also have the more expensive maintenance, but we'll ignore that for now. We'll just take a look at this car payment. You also have to pay $8,000 down to buy this car, but now you just set yourself up for years, if not decades, for car payments. And you might say, "But Jaspreet, what do you mean decades of car payments? I'm going to pay off my car in 5 years." Well, what ends up happening to a lot of people now is to pay $500 a month for 5 years. And then you finally pay off this car after paying $500 a month for years, and then you no longer have a car payment. Now your car is worth less than half what you bought it for, and now it feels weird not to have a car payment, so you do what everybody else does. You trade it in, because now when this car is 5 years older, it's now an old car. And now you want to trade it in for a newer car, and now you start the payments all over again. So now, after those 5 years, instead of paying $500 a month, now you're paying $650 a month. You want to know why? Because inflation happens. Cars are more expensive 5 years from now than they are today. And now you got to pay more money, and you're also making a little bit more money, so you want to have a nicer car to upgrade your lifestyle, because now you want the massaging seats in your car. So now you're paying $650 a month for your car. And now this happens year after year after year, decade after decade after decade. And now, instead of using this money in your 20s to invest into something like the economy, which I talked about in number 1, or to something like a rental property, which is what I talked about in number 2, or to something like your own business, which I haven't even talked about. But instead of doing that, you're using this money to invest into somebody else's dream life, somebody else's vacation, somebody else's college fund, because now you're paying the banker, you're paying BMW, you're paying Mercedes, and you're making them rich at your expense. And there's nothing wrong with you having nice cars. I just want you to be able to afford it first. I don't want you to have to worry about the price, because if you don't have the investments, but you have the nice car, your priorities are all in the wrong place. And this is where I want you to switch those priorities and understand, look, if you just buy a car with this $8,000 down payment, you took away this monthly mortgage because now you're driving a used Toyota Camry, well, guess what? Now you take this $500 a month and you put this into something like the economy, a rental property, your own business, something that's going to make you more money. And over the course of your career, well, now this money can make you significantly richer. We talked about this in point number 1. This is money that can be used to make yourself rich, to pay for your kids' college, even if you don't have kids yet. There's a lot of things that you can do with this additional money, but that requires you to make the sacrifice. And you're going to say, "But Jaspreet, that's easy for you to say." Well, yeah, it is, because I'm driving around in a beat-down Toyota Solara as well, and I understand the way this works because I've done it myself. If you enjoyed this clip and you want to continue your financial education journey, I have another video that I think you'll love. All you got to do is click that button right over there. And for those of you who want to stay up to date on the top finance and business news, you can join Market Briefs, my free financial newsletter, by clicking that button below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.